Good evening. This is number 210 of Oscar Mike Radio Mission in Flight. Oscar Mike Radio is part of the Hoobazoo Network. We're all over the place, and I am pleased to be joined by a guest I've wanted to talk to for a while. I am pleased to be joined by Air Force veteran James Van Prooyen, who is a business owner, coach, a man of many talents, growing his own outreach with veterans starting businesses, veterans transitioning, and he's really taught me a lot. He's a subject matter expert. I consider him that. And new friend James, welcome to Oscar Mike Radio.
Thank you, Travis. It's such an honor to be on your show. I've gotten to know you, I guess a few years ago we connected, but you know how that goes on social media. It was kind of a loose connection. And really recently this year, I got to know you better. And I just appreciate what you're doing, and it's always, at least for me as a podcaster, nice to be kind of have another podcaster as a guest. It's just a little easier. So thank you.
It does make certain things a little easier. You're absolutely right. It makes for a much livelier conversation sometimes. One of the things, so folks, yes, I did reach out to him a couple of years ago, and stuff happens. But the cool thing is we reconnected, and he's like, hey, you've been doing this podcast thing for a while, because I think the thing is a lot of people start podcasts and they quit, and you kept going, and he asked me to come check out this veterans in business group he has going on, and it was really cool to be a part of that, and we'll get into that. But first, you are an Air Force veteran. I've only talked to two on Oscar Mike Radio, Tim Montjoy and Connor Sullivan. You're the third one. So transitioning, we'll get back to what you're doing now, James, but kind of, summarize for us your Air Force career, because I've only talked to three people in the Air Force, yourself and Tim Montjoy and Connor Sullivan. So I'm interested to hear what your experience is like. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely, Travis. So I basically went into the Air Force knowing nothing about computers or IT at all. Really thought, hey, it'd be cool if I could be an electrician on a plane, learn that. And then, maybe I would kind of change from what I wanted to do with more in the residential electrical space. So I go into the military knowing nothing about computers. And of course, in the Air Force, we got pretty decent training, electrical principles and basic electronics, just understanding, basic computer network stuff. I was more on the encryption side, so learned a lot of things about the encryption of data, and first duty station was a air control squadron, so it was on the tactical side, which really, in a cool way, I didn't know it at the time, but set up my whole career, because I went in 95 and ended up, of course, staying 20 and retiring. And everything changed after September 11th, but with being in a unit that we deployed to Kuwait for the no-fly zone, kind of the monitoring the no-fly zone. We had a couple radars, so I really learned early how to deploy. We would set up in the middle of nowhere and set up our equipment and then tear it down. And then I started going to Kuwait. And for first deployment, I was 19 years old in Kuwait in 1996. And I already had, before I went to my next duty station, I think 4 or 5 deployments in. So
you did a full 20 in the military?
I did. Yep. I went in 1995 and got out in 2015. I mean, I figured if I went to 10, I would go 20. The hard decision point for me was more my best friend, who I'm still really close with now, got out after about 8 years in the Air Force. He was a SATCOM guy, and I was more in data. He got out and started his own telecom business probably within 8 months of getting out, about 2000. And so between my first and second enlistment, I was really close to getting out and going and trying to kind of do some stuff with him. But I ended up going to a new duty station and choosing to stay in. And then once I kind of got, from the 8 to 12 year, once I did that enlistment that would take me past 10, I knew I'd go 20.
Well, I mean, a lot of people, face that, and, a lot of them find out it was the correct thing to do. So you're in a full 20 and you transition out. And one of the things that a couple of people who've been in, 20, 25 years tell me is that it's not like for you all who were like 4 and 8 year, we had 20 years in an institutionalized setting. It can be challenging turning off the military switch and getting into civilian life. were there any significant challenges coming out of the Air Force and going into, a civilian, operating space?
That's a great question, Travis. For me, I would say it was harder than I thought it would be. In a good way, I got a few things from the military, specifically the Air Force, that I felt kind of, I didn't necessarily appreciate it at first, but I think, we were given the ability to change all the time, right? Like everything was always changing and adapt to the new environment. And so I got to do a lot of different jobs. It was a tactical, a lot of different deployments, had a lot of connections. But for me, I don't know if my transition would have been, well, I would say it would probably be a little easier if I got out and just used a lot of my connections to just basically turn right around and do either IT for the government still, or, in the IT space, or do something related to what I did for those 20 years. But I knew the whole 20 years when I was out, I wanted to kind of go away from doing that. And I didn't know what that looked like. So I think for me, and I definitely, looking back, didn't have the confidence. I mean, I did in myself, but enough to articulate it to other people. I was really hesitant to tell people, hey, I'm going to go after something in business, but I have no idea what it is. So, now I have a lot more clarity, but it definitely took me a lot longer personally than I thought it would have to transition, just because, it wasn't hard for me because I guess, fortunately, I was tactical and Air Force. So I felt like the Air Force was fitting of, I would always kind of sort of half joke to say it was the closest to being like a corporation, but still being in the military. It's really, especially since I was deployed so much, we were able to really have a lot of flexibility. So I felt a lot of those things gave me maybe a better time coming out of that environment. And in IT, right? Like I felt like I had enough skills and background that I would be able to figure it out. But I think the hardest part for me was about a year before I got out, I was like, okay, I want to stay in Tampa, Florida. I know no one in the business community, and kind of took some steps then that really have led to where I'm at now. But I didn't know what I was doing necessarily. But it was definitely took me a while to figure out exactly what I wanted to do when I was getting out.
Well, those are questions that everybody faces, but it's what we do next that really kind of finds our transition success. And it seems like now you're completely non-technical and you're back to dealing with people. Something in your transition said, you know what, I'm going to invest in myself, but I think there's value in investing in people, namely veterans. How did you get to that point?
Yeah, and it's interesting, and that's why I really love having these questions and talking about it. And it's easier, right, like farther down the road when it becomes more clear. But I can look back and there's a few things, right? Like I had mentioned, I didn't know what I was doing, but I was kind of chasing something that ended up happening, right? I was like, okay, those strategic things that didn't make sense then, of like, okay, I don't know anyone in the business community, let me plug into that community. I did, and that paid off. Like I started learning, because I think in the military side, like I don't remember, I think every branch is maybe a little different, but we did this anyway, and maybe every branch does this. In the Air Force, you definitely network to get things done for 20 years. You never know who you're going to need something from somewhere. So both ways, right? You're help, as a senior enlisted guy, you're making sure people have the resources and the things they need, and vice, back and forth. You're constantly doing that. And of course, your connections grow as you know more people. But to me, that would have helped if I stayed in the middle side. But as I was kind of getting out, doing different things, I started by plugging into that networking group, and I started getting kind of transitioning and learning the skills that I learned a little bit in the military, but more applicable to the business space of, like, talking about what my ideas were, being around business owners, being around successful people, being, kind of putting myself, kind of slowly learning how to, because one of the people that was really influential, at that time, that I'm still friends and influenced by, is a guy named Chris Kermitzos. And I felt like he was a really good community builder, a really good connector. And so now, they got into podcasting. So that's kind of where I got the idea of, like, okay, what do I care about? I knew the whole time I was in the military, I wanted to get into business. So I was like, okay, I was getting things out of listening to self-development business podcasts. So I was like, what better way I could kind of start a podcast related to military veteran business, learn myself, and hopefully give value to that community. And in the military, like, I think for me anyway, the military, I felt, we were about something bigger than ourselves, and I felt it was a space I really didn't want to leave totally. So that felt like a natural fit. Like, hey, let me help other people like me coming behind me, or in that space. I don't say win. That sounds kind of maybe bad, but I mean, like, give value. Like,
Right.
what are the missing pieces? What do people need? Let me facilitate and help people maybe who didn't get what I felt like. I didn't pay attention to some of these things when I was in, and as I was coming out, and as I learned, through my experiences, I was like, okay, let me help other people coming behind me, or just really kind of work in the military and veteran business space. So that was kind of how that all happened.
So you're helping veterans in business, and you're in business. What is your business about? What's the name? How do you approach, dealing with people in a meaningful way? Because
Yeah,
there's
absolutely.
the reason I ask that is there's like thousands of people out there telling you what to do in Instagram, on Facebook, Tony Robbins, those kind of people. But I think you were right. There's a very specific set of needs for the veterans community. So how did you build that into what you're doing now?
Yep, absolutely. So as I was coming out, actually, like I said, I plugged in a community that was getting into podcasting early on. I saw people really developing their message and their business and kind of building it and giving it voice with a podcast. So of course I started the Veterans in Business show in 2017, and I also co-founded with a friend of mine that was retiring from the Army, the Military Podcast Network. So we have the Military Podcast Network LLC. So that's kind of the business umbrella, and the Veterans in Business kind of underneath that. I do a Facebook group. Of course, you're a part of it, and you kind of referenced that earlier. And I've slowly grown that out. We do now have virtual happy hours and trainings that we added about 4 or 5 months ago. I was part of a mastermind, kind of wanted to, further what we talked about earlier. I wanted to put myself around other people with big dreams and big aspirations. I felt like media company using podcasting in the military space is a long-term thing that I wanted to really give voice to these different communities, and then me specifically underneath that umbrella on the military veteran business side. So as I was growing that out, it's like, I need more, a mastermind. I didn't know what a mastermind concept was, but I knew, hey, I want, you're the average of the 5 people you hang around the most. And I was already kind of starting to do that, right? Like, my circles started to change because of course, if I was going to stay in the military or do the other things we used to do, or just get out of the military and go work for the government, that would be a different circle of people. So as I was coming out and wanting to go towards business and at a high level, to do something I didn't know how to do, and at a big, in a big way, I started putting myself around those people and heard about this mastermind concept and joined a mastermind. And once I did that, I knew this is actually something I want to create for the military space as well. Like, launched my own mastermind. I talked about that for a while and launched that about 4 months ago. So that's one thing that I'm doing as well for business. And done some consulting on the podcast side. So a lot of what I'm involved with is related to specifically helping and doing different partnerships and collaborations with other people that can kind of fill in for the needs that I'm seeing in the military and veteran business space. So that's kind of an overview. There's a lot there, but that's the majority of the things I'm involved with on the business side.
So let's break this down a little bit and just deal with, a veteran who wants to make widget punchers and sell widget punchers. And he comes to, James, I think of you as like the Jedi of veterans business, right? And he says, I got a widget puncher. I've got a design. I'm trying to get this thing to hit. What's the first step you should tell him to take, or you normally look at when you're dealing with somebody like that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the cool thing, right? I don't know how much we've talked about it, but I'm also involved in Bunker Labs, which is a nonprofit that helps military veteran businesses and military spouse, but that's that community started about the time I got out, and there really was nothing. I mean, there's Boost the Business. There's some other entities out there a little bit that are helping, but I think personally, the Bunker Labs is the most involved in the military and veteran space of helping people start and grow businesses. So I think that's partially, have a conversation. That's what I love having the Facebook group for. We have new people all the time that are really trying to figure out what business they're going to do. So I think it starts off early of like, okay, what's the need? Where are you at? What are the tools and resources you need? And so really based on that conversation or the ability to facilitate that, it depends where I'm going to kind of point them to, because sometimes Bunker Labs is the right way. And that's really, I think, goes back to what I want to totally, truly create is how can I influence and have partnerships and have a way to where if someone does come to my community or someone refers someone to me, I'm able to help them whatever they need, either with my relationships, like someone like you or whoever, like here's the right person of what you need. I don't know if that totally answers it, but that's
It's a
my
start.
first.
It's a start. So let's just it's a kind of like a 3-part question. Here's part 2. So you get him plugged into Bunker Labs. You get him plugged into the group, and I'll tell everybody, if you're a veteran in business, it behoove you to look this group up, because you're going to get real world advice from people who are in the trenches trying to get their own thing going, but are freely sharing how they do it. So, he's a member of the group. He got me to Bunker Labs. He's talking to you, and or she. I mean, so no offense here, people, but that person, comes to you, says, "I got this challenge, man. I'm really hitting in a rut. I'm getting frustrated. I'm getting irritated. How do you?" That's where I'm, asking, does the coaching aspect really kick in, and what can you do to help that person kind of break through their slump?
Yeah, that's a great question, Travis. And I think it goes a little bit. I have not done, and I don't know at what point I would want to do truly one-on-one business coaching. Like right now, that's the part I like about a mastermind, depending on who the person is, because not everybody's a fit for it. That's a part, like the good thing, and at least to me, and why I've invested in my time and money and resources of putting myself always in a mastermind is, of course, like we can't always see, if we have 5 or 7 people or whoever all looking at the same thing, we all see it a different way. So I think a mastermind, or plugging into other people doing similar things is always, I think at some point what people should do, because it doesn't matter how far along you are. Nobody knows all the answers. And so I think that's one thing and one reason I really started that. But the other part is, as I grow my network and as I grow my resources and the ability to give the people what they need, that's really what I want to be able to do. And to me, at least how I view it in business, like I don't think I should be like, I want to have the ability to anybody who comes into my community, sell them something. Like I think sometimes it wouldn't be something I would personally sell. It would be like, okay, I can get them what they need. Like, here's the best person you need to talk to, or here's the person that can help you, or here's the business that does that can help you do that. So I think that's why it's a little, I'm not trying not to answer it, but it's a case by case scenario. It depends what the person needs. And right now, the main thing I have on the military veteran business side is the mastermind that I launched, or just on the free side, right? Like for the community, that's the reason I really do the podcast, is I really want them to be able to get some of those answers through the podcast, through the Facebook group, through the trainings, the people that we bring on, through the happy hours with other people. Just last night, right? We were on a happy hour with, last week, somebody is just getting ready to launch a toothpaste company. And he came in last week. And then this week, all the people that I wanted to introduce him to that were in that group ended up being on the happy hour call last night. So if someone went in that group and watched that and is on there's a guy that has a barbecue sauce company, a guy that's just now that I was referencing that has the toothpaste company, have a guy, that you've had on your podcast lately, John was in there. And then Travis Arnold, who has a shaving cream company. So here's a people that were almost all at the same point, to where in that time they could all kind of like, here's, where are you at? Let's all help each other. Let's link each other. So to me, even on the free side, I mean, that's what it's all about, like to facilitate that and be able to influence that. You never know down the road where some of that might not come back to me on the business side of what I'm doing and providing, but that's on the free side kind of. And I hate to get into marketing, but if you talk marketing, you're talking funnels in a way, that's a way to kind of bring people in and funnel them in and get them to where they need to go. When, I want to be able to have that and provide that. And that's really, more and more the thing that I've wanted to do is, specifically me personally, be able to, anybody that comes to me, give them what they need and point them in the right direction. And that happens kind of organically through the podcast I'm doing, through the relationships I've gotten, through the Facebook group, and through Bunker Labs, of course, in that community.
In a way, before you to part 3 of the question, it almost, potato, apple and orange. What I'm hearing is a lot of what Gary Vaynerchuk talks about. He's in media, you're in veterans business, but it's almost the same thing, and it works, right? Where if you have that mindset that you're going to give, you're going to get a whole lot more in return. And by helping others become successful, then ultimately you become successful. And this leads me to the next part of my question is, explain to me what's that like when you get the text, Facebook message, or Facebook post that, hey, I got a win today, I got a huge order, or I land a contract, or, oh my God, we had 100 followers and now we hit 4,000 subscribers and we're starting to get paid. What does that do to you, James?
I love that question, Travis. And that's what it ends up to me being all about. And in a weird way, that's where I wanted to go. Like when I got out, no matter what I ended up doing, I wanted it to be something that was, something that would cause ripples in all these other areas. And that's why I love the military space. And, even after, right, because I've got some people that are still in, and then some people that are out. Both ways is just being able to facilitate and be even a small part of helping that person get to that point. That's what it's all about. And that's a cool thing personally, what I've found by being consistent in the group of, like I said last week, there was one person that showed up for the happy hour, but instead, I still showed up, I still did it. And I didn't go, oh, it's only one person. I had a conversation with that person. We never ended up going live into the group, but I now might always know that person. And who knows how much longer from now that person might point back, you know what, that was kind of a way that really tripled my business, or, propelled me to this or propelled me to that. So to me, that's exactly what this is all about. And that, I mean, and probably on your side with the podcast, I mean, some people, because at least for me, I don't know about you, but I always tell people, if you're, and this is what I'd always heard and subscribe to, if you're not willing, you're not going to do your podcast or wanting to do it and commit to like 5 years, don't even start, because it really, unless you're somebody that really has a huge audience already before you start, it's going to take some time, but it's worth it, right? Like, so same thing with the live, doing the happy hours that we do, is by showing up, by giving that platform for people to get their message out and to get other like-minded people around each other. Because, we talked a little bit pre-show, like we definitely can't do this by ourselves. And, that's what really motivates me and always will. And, I'm like anyone else. Sometimes you want things to go faster, or like everything's going to take longer than you think. And so some days, you're just not feeling it. But when you have those things happen, then it just is like an injection, right? Like that's what it's all about. So for me, it's, I've always looked at it as the long game. It's not one of those things like, let me stick my toe in and see if it works. My personal thing was, I'm all in on this. There's no other plan B. And I really feel like it's been, kind of coming full circle and really working. And I would have never imagined, and that's the other thing for me, I think everybody kind of subscribes to something different, but I was like, okay, fortunately I have a retirement pay. I have certain, I'm getting the post 9/11 GI Bill and going to school. So I'm using some of these things that I already have in my background to be able to slowly build a business and not be like, I need to make this work in 6 months or I can't, eat or turn the lights on. So I've been, like I said, this is just all in for the long term to really stay involved and help in the military space, specifically me on the military and veteran business side.
Excellent, excellent. The only thing I'll say about my view on podcasting right now is it's exploded because of COVID-19. And someone asked me about that, and I said, well, it's people have been starting stuff in this year. Let me see where they are in 3 years. And I think you're absolutely right. I never went in with a 5-year plan. I kind of went in with the idea that you had, that there's no backup plan. I'm going to do this thing and take it as far as I can go with what I got. And it's been amazing, what's been happening. But certainly one thing that you kind of, counseled me on, because, in one of your, forums, I'm like, why do I want to do this? Why do I want to network with people who I don't know are going to rip off what I'm doing and package it as their own? Where's the benefit in that? And you really said, hey, in the group and between us, you're like, I know where you're coming from. You told me, where I'm coming from, but you also said, I want you to get in the idea that we're stronger together. I think it's important because, me being me, a lot of military guys being military and women being military people, if we can't do it on our own, if we're not self-sufficient, it's very hard for us to ask for help. So, as we wind this down, I kind of want to, have you, explain that to the audience, why together is better than alone.
Great question, Travis. I love that question. And I think we all have to learn, and some of us have it more natural than others. But I think, fortunately for me, I saw and was kind of trained as I was coming out a community that this was this whole abundance mentality. And I think you've probably heard, right? Like there's these people, and I'm not saying this is different depending on what your thing is. So I'm not saying something are proprietary, and of course Coca-Cola, you're not going to know their recipe, right? So there's certain things that you definitely want to kind of keep close to your vest. But a lot of times, and I think maybe even on the show you mentioned earlier, a lot of times it's like, okay, I don't want anybody to know what this is. I want to do it, and I want to be that person. So I think sometimes, especially early on in business, we're like, oh, I need to protect my idea, but it's like ends up being the opposite. Like, in a good way, and what I'm learning over time, right, by being in, the groups that you're giving, and you talked about it earlier, like giving value, like Gary Vee talks about jab, jab, right hook concept of give, and then ask. It's like so many people aren't doing what you're doing, and they're like, hey, I have the answer, like I want to help you succeed in what you're doing. So I think it ends up being, it's a mindset thing, but it's like the opposite of what we're fearing. Like, and I definitely am like other people where I've had that, kind of constantly. We talked a little bit, I think pre-show, I'm competitive. I played sports growing up, and in the military, and it's definitely hard to ask as a male anyway. I can only speak for myself. We want to be self-sufficient. We want to, I got this. I'm not going to want to talk to people and kind of let them in, to really kind of look below the hood or kind of hear their input. So a lot of times I think that's what helped by putting myself in those spaces, by really volunteering this business organization as I was coming out, and being around a lot of people that I watched, connect people together with the right people with what they needed. I feel like I just saw the value of it and the power, and I think it's an ever evolving thing. Like as your networks grow and as your connections grow and as your, the circle of people you're around, you could, and that's what it was all about for me, is like, I wanted to have the ability, in my mind, I was like, build the, this concept I heard, build the bridge before you need it. I was like, okay, I don't want to, I want to really establish good relationships and connections. And I feel as have an IT background and communications background and being in the podcast space, I really felt like with the ability especially in 2020, to be able to have much of a reach and be able to talk to people in so many different ways and network. And now, especially post-COVID, you can really get on a lot more, groups and stuff like that. I felt like that was the answer. Like the more you could surround yourself with people that are wanting to help other people, and because not everybody's that way, but you'll see it, right? If you go to a group, you can kind of tell the people that are more takers. But I felt like, it's still worth it. It's still worth at least some time to invest, because what's the return? That return on your, quote unquote investment, you just never know later where that's going to go. And that's really what's built it off for me. And being around, and again, I talk about the mastermind. That's why I like that. I saw, I was involved in a mastermind that was very pro, connection, relationship based, and giving, give and then you get, concept. So, it was an evolution for me, but it's, that's what's cool. And I see it, week after week and day after day with, whether it's my Facebook group or whether it's the Bunker Labs stuff that I'm involved with. There's just so much opportunity. There's so much need. There's so much, and that's the other thing, to kind of bring it back to podcasting, that I saw. Fortunately for me, as I was watching, I watched, I'll never forget, and I kind of talked about this. I saw a panel in the Tampa Bay area where there was like 4 or 5 real estate people. You would think, oh, all these people are kind of competitors, and they all kind of have podcasts, but each one of them, a lot of them listen to each other's podcasts. But again, in a way, your and my podcast might be similar, but you're going to do it differently than I'm going to do it. And there's, it's like, I think it's in a weird way, to an extent, not, there could be 5 people doing the same kind of thing, and all those 5 people in the podcast space are going to be different. So I think it goes even, kind of hand in hand with business, and that of those were things I was watching and seeing that really taught me, I think personally, that, and as I've kind of elevated and been around people that are very, very successful in business, I would say just about every one of them, definitely the majority of them, it's about community and collaboration and helping each other, definitely not going at it, quote unquote, as a lone wolf, and I think, if you read quite a few of the successful, things about successful people in general, they've never done it alone. I mean, we didn't do it really alone in the military either, right? We had great teams,
right.
And that's kind of how you were able to get it done.
So how can veterans find you and coordinate and connect with you to, help move their business forward?
Absolutely. We kind of referenced, I think one of the best places to plug in that I like to have people come into is the Veterans in Business Facebook group that I do. So that's on Facebook, and of course you're in that as well, and I appreciate that. You can find me on also. I really don't have a preference per se. I'm using LinkedIn a lot more than I used to over time. So I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. I don't use Twitter very, very much, but I'm still on there. So you really can find me anywhere. You can email me at james.vanprooyen@bunkerlabs.org. Those are probably the best ways. Like, I'm definitely easy to connect with.
So I'll have all the links to those in the Oscar Mike Radio show post, and in the Facebook and YouTube and Instagram shows as well. So there's no excuse, because again, he invited me to the group. I got to see the group, and like, oh yeah, there's other podcasters doing things very different from me. I'm very different from them, but it's kind of funny. I think you're right. There's a core of people that want the same thing, and I think at the end of the day, you and I both want veterans to succeed no matter what they do.
Absolutely. And I think that's just what I've continued to see, almost like these dots where it's like, okay, if I was in this type of business, like if I was, we kind of referenced, or I talked about earlier, people with maybe a product business, and especially if they're in the early phases of a product business, I'm like, why wouldn't all those people want to help each other and really work with each other to help because they're maybe competing against each other in a very small way, but not really. And there's so many customers to go around, but they're having the same issues. They're having the same things. So, that's definitely what I want to facilitate, is the way to where I definitely try to put people together with people that are doing similar things. And really it's about just seeing people win. And I think, we talked about it a little bit earlier, and I think that's good business practice. I think there's enough where it'll come back to me. Like, it's, things have happened for me through that. And that's really, it just gives you that satisfaction that you're making a difference. And that's what I want to do. And I continue to get better and get more resources and more ways to plug people in what they need.
Fantastic. Well, again, this has been a very interesting topic to discuss. There's a lot of veterans who try to start their own nonprofits, start their own business, or get in the business and get, face some, significant challenges through transition and through just understanding how to, you know, rewire their mind around military issues. And I can tell you personally, ladies and gentlemen, that I have sat in on many of these groups, and James, I've always learned something. And it's never been a waste of time to come and participate. And so I'm just going to say that this is great work that you're doing, and if you are a veteran looking to get your own thing going, no matter where you are in the United States, this is a place to get started for sure.
Thank you for that, Travis. And I mean, I think that, at the end, that's what you kind of talked about the feedback. I mean, I even consider that feedback. That's my intent. And really, I feel that's kind of what I was talking about with the business strategy and the business ethics of, give, and even you can reference Gary Vee, it's give that stuff for free and give the value to where everything you give, and if it's an email, if it's whatever you're giving someone at the lowest level, to where they walk away like, you know what, I learned something, or I'm better for having spent my time there. And that's what it's all about to me. Is I'll be honest, like at this in my life and the things that I'm involved with, it's not that I don't want to do it or be involved in it. So that's definitely my philosophy. And so thank you for saying that. I really appreciate it.
No, it's for real. It's for real, because I'm learning how hard this is just with getting this going and the things around this that are branching out because of Oscar Mike Radio. So a lot of those challenges that I'm facing right now, and it's nice to know that I'm not alone. And you're not alone, folks. As we wind down number 210, you are not alone. I hear veterans tell me that I'm alone, that there's no one out there. You're not alone. You're going to come into James's group and you're going to get plugged in. And before you know it, you're going to be giving talks about what you do, and people are going to be on your team. It's great. Well,
thank you, Travis.
Well, James, this has been fun, and I can't wait to have you back on and talk about things that are going on for you and for me in 2021. Again, folks, you can catch it all here on Facebook, YouTube, on the OscarMikeRadio.com website. I'll have all the links to James's ways you can contact him and his business in the show post. And as we say at Oscar Mike Radio now, mission in flight.